Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today, with the Black History Month theme going on, I wanted to talk about the importance of a very, very major figure in Black history, and that is Malcolm X. Okay. Now, usually when Black History Month comes about, you always hear about Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, Frederick Douglass. No, that's fine. But rarely do you get a real chance to hear and talk about Malcolm X and the significant role he played in Black history. And I'm not even talking about his role with civil rights. Not even talking about that. I'm just talking about him as a person, his life story, and what it means represents, especially in today. All right. For those who don't know, Malcolm X was born Malcolm Little at May 19th, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska. Um, he grew up very rough. His father was killed by Klansmen, the Ku Klux Klan. His mother was sent to a mental institution, and he throughout his entire life has always been hardship. He went around, getting into things as he grew up as a young man and going to jail and you know doing drugs and selling drugs. He lived a life that rappers talk about. If you ever listen to you listen to some rap, you hear rappers talking about, trapping out the bando and selling drugs and all that stuff and doing this with this woman and all that stuff, being you know, a gangster and all that stuff. He literally lived that. He was in a very dark space in his life. It just he was his upbringing. His upbringing was rough. The stuff he went through as a child, especially a teenager and a young man, getting into gangs and like pimping and doing drugs, selling drugs, and he was on that path that people know. There were people who, if it was today, people would have called him. They would call him a lost cause. He was considered a lost cause, right? And it was during his time in prison where a change was made in his life. You call it religious experience, a change, some significant change happened in his life, where when he got to prison, it was said that he would read the dictionary from A to Z. You could find this out in his autobiography of Malcolm X. I used to have that book when I was a little kid. He would read the dictionary, and in prison he heard about the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad from the Nation of Islam, and he would write corresponding letters to the Nation of Islam, wanting to meet Elijah Muhammad. They met. He became a follower of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and his life did a total 180. And not 360, 180, because 360 means you go right back around to where you were. 180 means you were here and you started here. So if you were bad here, 180 means you're good here. So his life took a complete 180, and he changed his life for the better. He became a teacher. He became a minister. He was very, very vocal about his stance on the government. Very, very honest, very, very blunt. He even did debates. He used to debate. There's actually footage of him when you go on YouTube and look at footage of him debating. And he made his points very, very clear and very, very direct about how he felt about blacks in America during that time. And what was the way that he saw for them to do better with their lives while in this system of white supremacy, and it was and he was a very powerful, influential figure, you know, in America, in the world actually, because he not only spread the message in America, he went to Africa. A lot of people don't know that. He was actually trying to join the Africans in America and the Africans from the continent, join them together. Unity, self-reliance. Shoot, self-love, love for oneself, knowledge of self, do for self, self-sufficient. And he felt as though, joining blacks in America and joining in the Caribbean, joining blacks from the continent of Africa, putting them back together. Because for so long we had been separated, both physically and mentally, that he said, you know what, I need to go to both places and try to join our people back together, both mentally and physically and spiritually. Put us back together as one, as we once were when we were at our height of power and prominence. And with his life, to me, he has the best example of what you would call, like not giving up on the young. There were a lot of people, a lot of elders during that time, and you have some elders now that say, no, this generation is lost, and this generation has nothing going for them. They're just so negative, so violent, and a lot of people forgot that Malcolm X was one of those those lost youth. He was a lost youth. That's why whenever you saw Malcolm X, we saw footage of him. I never met him obviously because he died before I was born. So whenever it was talking about how whenever you spoke to him, he never spoke to you in a condemning manner, especially with the youth. He never spoke to the youth in a condemning manner. I mean, he would let the youth know that what you're doing isn't right, but he never spoke in a condemning manner because he knew how he was when he was young. He was that lost soul in the street running around getting into everything possible. He was that. He was the youth that the elders condemned at that time. The same way how some of the elders would condemn the youth now. He was that youth. And then but everyone praises him. Everyone praises Malcolm X, but they forget about the story of Malcolm Little. And to me, you can't have the story of Malcolm X without the story of Malcolm Little. Because if you just give everybody the story of Malcolm X, it's incomplete. If you give the people just half of the story, it's incomplete. If you want to really understand the magnitude and the majesty and the greatness of Malcolm X, you have to talk about Malcolm Little. You have to talk about that lost soul, so to speak. You have to talk about that young man who was, lost. You have to talk about him. And once you talk about him, then you can bridge the gap between the lost youth and the wise elder. Because you can't have the wise elder without the lost youth. You need both. You can't have a Malcolm, like I said, you can't have a Malcolm X without a Malcolm Little. You need a Malcolm Little. You have to show the complete story of a man's or woman's rise to greatness. Because if you don't have that story of struggle before you obtain your greatness, then the youth are not going to hear you because the youth can't see themselves in you. The youth love Malcolm X, even to this day. The one figure that they love from back then, from the civil rights era and beyond and before, is Malcolm X. Not because he was, a minister. Not really because of by any means necessary. His famous quote, by any means necessary. Not really because of that. The youth of today love Malcolm X because of the story of Malcolm Little. Because Malcolm Little is the average young teenager, young person who gets into some rough stuff in life and just life deals him a bad hand. I mean, life dealt Malcolm Little a bad hand from the jump. From the very beginning, life dealt Malcolm Little a bad hand. and he dealt with that bad hand the best way he could. The best way he could. He made some mistakes, got into some deep stuff during his life, but that's what made Malcolm X so great. It's the struggle of Malcolm Little becoming Malcolm X. And the youth can appreciate if they can relate to you. And how many teenagers, how many young adults can't how many people can relate to Malcolm Little? You know how many people we have who are disenfranchised, who are impoverished, who are having the roughest life that you can think of, and then somehow, some way, by some method, some means, they find a way to overcome that hardship to obtain their greatness throughout history. So when you say, okay, who's the figure that we can look to, that we could say, you know what, the youth isn't lost. As crazy as things may seem and as wild as the youth may be at times, and they can be, we have an example of why you should never give up on the youth, regardless of how bad things may seem. Malcolm X is the perfect example of a person, a literal rags to riches story, not monetary, but in terms of mentally. Malcolm X is the story of a mental and psychological and spiritual rags to riches. Came, started from the bottom. He's literally the Drake song. Started from the bottom. Now we're here. That's Malcolm X. Malcolm X literally started from the bottom. You got to think about the time he was born. May 19th, 1925, in Omaha, Nebraska, with the Ku Klux Klan at an all-time high in power. His father being killed by the Klan, his mother being sent to a psych ward, and it's just him and his siblings. He had siblings. They didn't go through all of that. Then they get into drugs and get into, violence of all kinds, and go to jail back and forth. We all seen the famous Malcolm X or Malcolm Little, profile, image. We seen that. We seen his jail. We seen his mugshot. We seen that. To go from all of that to become one of the most well-known leaders in the world. Unfortunately, he was assassinated. He was assassinated. That sucks. But his life, his full life, is the prime example of never give up on the youth. Never give up. So as crazy as things may seem, and I know there's some elders who may see some of the youth and just say, no, they're a lost cause. Remember, there's a Malcolm X in every generation. Every generation, there's a Malcolm X. Every generation, there's a group of people or a person that seem lost and hopeless and just you can't be helped. And all it takes is for a good word, a kind word, an enlightened word. And before you know it, you have now brought Malcolm Little up to Malcolm X in every generation, male or female, no matter what, no matter where you are in the world. There's a Malcolm X in every person, because every person was once that lost cause. I don't care how sanctified people may seem now, but in their youth, nobody was born holy. Nobody was born holy. We all came up with some stuff on us. We all got some dirt on us. Malcolm never hid his dirt though. So everyone, the youth and the elders, look at the life story of Malcolm X, and then make sure you are a lot more kind to your fellow man, woman, or child. We all have it in us. Okay, so that's my message. That's one of my Black History Month messages right there. Hope you enjoyed it. Comment down below. Let me know what you think about it, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.